Judge Leifman, when I picked him up last night at the airport, I said, oh, Bob Wesley, oh, I know Bob. Alicia, oh, I know her. Jerry Demings, oh, I just spent 2 days with him at the White House. I mean, I mentioned one after the other. Judge Bob will be like, oh, Bob and I know each other. We go way back. He knows all of our people. He knows we have what it takes here in Central Florida to do this work. What he didn't probably know about is this resilience network, which is the 500 plus individuals and 250 plus organizations that are ready to work together. The educators in the room, the mental health professionals, the artists, because it is a collective impact model. It will take all of us. Thank you, Judge Leifman, for being here. What a gift and an honor. And thank you, Judge Lattimore, for facilitating him being here. They're also friends. So I'm happy to welcome the moderator of our next panel, who is retired Honorable Judge Bob Leblanc. Now, I brought up this is the packet. There's one printed packet on everyone's table. I wanted you to know that. So if you wanted to read Judge Leblanc's full bio, it is here. I'm going to read a part of it, but all the program today is here for you. So Leblanc graduated from the University of Miami Law School in 1989 and was in private practice for 15 years, handling criminal defense cases, and established his own firm, Leblanc and Lanaco, in 1996 with partner Frank Inaco. He was elected Circuit Court Judge of the Ninth Circuit in 2006, re-elected in 2012 and 2018. He presided over family, civil, domestic violence, and circuit criminal divisions for 15 years. It goes on to say his awards, and I'm going to let you read them in the panel, but I just want to say, when people like someone, it doesn't really matter what kind of awards they got, you know, when you know they're a good person. When I met Bob Leblanc, I met him through the voices of others. Do you know him? Have you met him? He's amazing. He's wonderful. We're lucky to have him. Judge Bob Leblanc, who is now retired, is one of these people who the community has counted on and relied on over the years. He is here to moderate our esteemed panel, and I am grateful to see him here today and have him join us. Honorable retired Judge Bob Leblanc.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to see some familiar faces and some new faces, some I haven't seen in a long time. I'm going to introduce first State Attorney Monique Worrell. She's our first panelist coming up. She's the State Attorney for the Ninth Circuit. She was elected in November of 2020 and serves as our Chief Prosecutor. She's the second African-American elected as State Attorney and the first of Caribbean descent. She made Central Florida her home in 1996 after receiving her law degree from the University of Florida in 1999, starting originally with the Public Defender's Office. She later became a clinical law professor at the University of Florida College of Law. She developed and implemented the Your Future, Your Choice program to teach youth their rights and responsibilities. She left the University of Florida to become the founding director of the Conviction Integrity Unit in the State Attorney's Office in Orange County. She's an accomplished criminal justice attorney with experience as a leader, advocate, educator, and administrator. Welcome, Monique. Our next panelist is our elected Orange County Public Defender, Bob Wesley. Mr. Wesley was elected Public Defender in November of 2000. His entire professional career has been spent in the criminal justice system. He's practiced criminal defense in Central Florida since 1984. He worked as a parole officer before attending law school, holds a master's degree in criminal justice from Rollins College, received his JD from FSU with honors. He's capital case qualified, as I was, under the Florida rules of the Florida Supreme Court, life member of the NAACP, previous board service, Central Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, Rotary Club, Tiger Bay, NAACP Executive Council, Emmanuel Episcopal Church, Vestry, and many local bar associations. Our elected public defender, Bob Wesley. Wherever you'd like. And former neighbor, right. All right, our third panelist is Undersheriff Mark Canty with the Orange County Sheriff's Orange County Sheriff's Office. He grew up in Pine Hills. After graduating from Northwestern University in 1994, he came home to Orlando, where working in a residential group home for the Urban League made him realize that a career in law enforcement was his calling. His devotion to improve community-police relations in his hometown has been his driving ideal. His hallmark is leadership by example, including thus being in the spotlight in June 2016 when a gunman killed 49 people and injured scores more in an act of terror and hate at the Pulse nightclub. He was commander of the SWAT team at the time. In March 2019, Sheriff John Mina appointed Canty as the Undersheriff of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. That office provides direct managerial oversight of the Operational Services Bureau. He has the vision, skill, and desire to further the excellence of this nationally accredited law enforcement agency. Undersheriff Mark Canty. All right, I've got a few prepared questions for the panelists. Oh, Judge Leifman's coming back. There's our fourth one. Do I have to read his biography again? Okay. All right, I'm going to ask a few prepared questions that we did ahead of time, and then we'll open it up to the audience if you have any questions. All right, starting with the state attorney, you've recently said that incarceration does not necessarily mean rehabilitation. You want to see people rehabilitated. What is the vision for the state attorney office, and how does that play into public safety?
Well, good morning, and thank you, Judge, for the question. So, I don't think incarceration ever equals rehabilitation because it's not designed for that purpose. I have a little bit of experience with that because for those of you who know me, you know that I came to the practice of criminal law because I have a brother who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He was a veteran of the United States Air Force. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and then began self-medicating with illegal narcotics, as so many individuals with bipolar disorder and PTSD do. He spent my entire life in and out of jail and is still not rehabilitated. So if incarceration led to rehabilitation, then we wouldn't see any recidivism. And as we look at recidivism rates in those that Judge Leifman even mentioned, going from a 70% recidivism rate to a 6% when people actually are enrolled in programs that are focused on rehabilitation, then we see that that's not the purpose of incarceration. So our strategy is to pull on the community resources that are available that will foster rehabilitation, because incarceration in most cases isn't forever. And when people come back to our communities, we'll see the same issues over and over and over again if we don't develop a plan for rehabilitation.
All right, this is for the public defender, Mr. Wesley. Most of us agree the goal is to keep children in school and out of court, to reduce in-school arrests, out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions. Statistics show that contact with the juvenile justice system increases the likelihood that youth will reoffend. Can you describe the civil citations program, discuss local and statewide impact data, as well as the challenges you continue to face?
The juvenile justice system is complex because we don't want to traumatize kids. As kids, we have a great partner in our state attorney who wants to divert kids out of court and put them in programs. But a long-term Department of Juvenile Justice staffer told me one time, no matter what we do or don't do, 75% of these kids are not coming back. Only a quarter of them are the ones who continue to offend and have true problems at home with the family and in the community. Why are we processing so many kids if we know that they're not going to come back? The school is strong enough, the church is strong enough, the family is strong enough, the kids are embarrassed enough that it should be this lifelong dangle that they carry about them that they were in the justice system, when they've done everything that they could do to satisfy their parents and satisfy the community. And most of the help in this endeavor has been with the prosecutor initiating it. But we still have lots of kids that have lots of trouble. You know, the poet said that it's our hope that every child is the product of a true romantic affair, that parents love their children and bring them into the world. But nobody knows about the guy from Panelists County who's on death row, whose mother had traded him for a dinette set when he was a child. A woman I represented named M, I'll call her only by her first name, her mother would sell her to families as a child, and then on the third night, the child was supposed to open the window or unlock the door and come out and sneak out with their mother, and they go to another town and sell her again one place. A woman I represented who's been executed, nobody ever asked, how many foster homes were you raped in? How many different names did the foster parents give you? What chance did she have? We have to listen to that trauma, like Steve Leifman said. We have to listen to what's broken, and we have to honor that as being really the problem in that person's life, not that they're a problem to the community. Thank you.
All right. All right, as to the Undersheriff, your office has begun using adult civil citations. Can you discuss the history of the program, its challenges and successes?
Absolutely. Good morning. Our adult civil citation program is actually a partnership with the state attorney's office. In 2022, we traveled around the state to see what other agencies were doing, other circuits were doing, and we realized that we could not do it solely as law enforcement. We needed to partner with the state attorney's office. So in June of 2022, we started a pilot program here in the Ninth Circuit with ourselves at the Sheriff's Office, Orlando Police, and Kissimmee Police Departments, and the state attorney's office. The program is designed to take first-time offender adults that have committed nonviolent misdemeanors and divert them from the criminal justice system so they're not getting arrested. They're doing some type of diversion that we work with the state attorney's office, so they may do some community service, other type of sanctions like that. So it has been successful. I think the Sheriff's Office has issued over 90 adult civil citations. I think some of the challenges we run into is in order to do it, the victim in the cases have to be willing to participate. So I can't just go and say, hey, I know you're a victim of a crime, we're going to put this person into a civil citation program. So our job and our challenge has been to educate our deputies so they can go out and they can talk to the victims of these minor nonviolent misdemeanors and get them to say, hey, this person has never done any crimes before. This might be a way to get them, to keep them out of the criminal justice system, which we know if once you're in it, you kind of stay in it. So this is a way to keep them out of it. So I think it's been successful. We're looking at expanding it. I know it's going to be expanded to the other agencies in the Ninth Circuit. So we're looking for it to be a success.
All right, let me follow that up with another question for the Undersheriff. Describe your partnership with the Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health and the Behavioral Response Unit. Why was it formed? What are the goals? Any impact data and possible impact on the future?
So in 2020, the sheriff kind of looked at what we were doing, and I think everybody would agree that the sheriff's office and other police departments respond to probably a lot of calls that really don't require an enforcement component. But nonetheless, our society doesn't have a mechanism to respond to some of these incidents. So we were responding to a lot of cases that had mental health issues. So the sheriff tasked our staff to go around the country and around the state to look at what other agencies were doing, and we came up with the co-responder model. We chose and decided to partner with Devereaux because they were already doing stuff with their mobile crisis unit. And so late in 2020, we created the unit which had a sergeant, 2 deputies, and 2 clinicians. And through our partnership with Devereaux, we pay them to provide the clinicians, and those units respond not necessarily as first responders, but as second responders, and they go out to calls to assist our patrol deputies with cases that involve somebody going through a mental challenge. Over the last 2 years, 3 years, we've increased the size of the unit. It's now a sergeant, a corporal, 4 deputies, and an analyst, and we're getting ready to add an attorney so we can start doing more risk protection orders. So.
All right, thank you. Judge Leifman, how do you see the work we're doing here in Central Florida to become trauma-informed as key to solving the problems that you addressed in your keynote? What do you think we need to do to be doing more of?
This is a good start. It really, you always have the opportunity to take advantage of either a judge or a prosecutor, the public defender, sheriff, mayor. You need to bring all the right people to the table to address these issues. And once, what we realized when we had our summit, it wasn't nefarious. just everybody was so busy doing their jobs. It's hard to stop and readjust sometimes to what you're doing. The police are policing, the judge is judging, the prosecutor prosecuting, the defender. But this one poor soul with this very serious illness is accessing the services of every single person in the room. And so if you can bring the stakeholders together that are affected by all of this and come up with a plan, you can make a significant difference. I will tell you one thing in trauma that we had not anticipated when we first set up our program, and that was the incredibly high level of PTSD among law enforcement officers. And we didn't realize it until years later, because we train almost every 3 weeks in our CIT police program. But the woman that runs our program, who is amazing, she gets 250 calls a month from police officers that she has trained for their own personal mental health issues. And what we found is that they will not go to the departments for help for all the obvious reasons. But it also explains so tragically why more officers last year died from suicide than in the line of duty, and why not only do they have high suicide rates, they have high divorce rates, they have high domestic violence rates, and they have high substance use rates because of the PTSD. Many are from military coming into the departments, getting re-traumatized, and some are getting traumatized on the job. Trauma doesn't discriminate. And so one of the things that we did as part of our program is we set up a program for police officers to get treated outside the department with the permission of all the police chiefs. And guess what happened? Our police shootings almost stopped.
Okay. All right. One more question for the state attorney. You've pushed back against the negative accusations to your office, and you've been proactive with training your office towards your goals. What are some of the challenges your office has faced? Can you address the different strategies you've undertaken and about misconceptions concerning the state attorney's office role in heightening the conviction rate as it relates to arrest versus convictions?
That was a long question.
How are you dealing with the negative accusations that have been posted about you?
Therapy.
I can refer you to some awful nice vendors here.
So I think it's important for the community to understand the role of the state attorney's office. I don't think that people ever paid as much attention to what the state attorney does until very recent times, right? So one of the things that I've done is really committed myself to education. When you turn on the news and you see this person has been convicted this many times, they've been arrested this many times, and they were on the street and they committed this horrible offense. Well, you know, the way karma would have it, it's happening across the state. So it can't just be something that's isolated to our community. But the reason that happens is because of what I said in the first question, is that incarceration doesn't rehabilitate. So when people go to prison, they come home eventually, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and they are likely to recidivate because they haven't been rehabilitated. So it's important for people to understand that the state attorney's role isn't to prevent crime from happening. The state attorney's role is to respond to crime once it has happened. And our role is very different from that of law enforcement, because when they make arrests based on the theory of probable cause. Our standard is much higher. It is beyond a reasonable doubt. But not only does the gap exist between our standards, when we get the case, we get to hear what is the mitigation of this individual? What is the desire of the victim? Does the victim want to participate in this prosecution? And these are all factors that impact whether or not an arrest translates to a conviction. So when we just go out and we make blanket statements about arrests versus convictions, it breeds misconceptions among the community about what our different roles are and how we can impact convictions. I'm proud to say that in the first quarter of this year, my felony lawyers took 40 cases to trial, and with those 40 cases, they have a 90% conviction rate. The reason that we're able to do that is because we only take those cases to trial that we can in fact prove beyond a reasonable doubt, instead of taking everything that comes in the door, and then we are wasting tax dollars, we're wasting resources, and we're overwhelming the court system. And I think that's the responsible way for us to manage our role in this very big picture of criminal justice.
All right, thank you. One question for the public defender. You've said that you worry about the 25% of young people who fall through the cracks based on communities with systemic racism and poverty, which ACES science acknowledges as adverse community environments. Orange County has experienced the trauma of deaths due to gun violence and an uptick of violent crime among young men over the last few years. The mayor responded with his Citizen Safety Task Force. What are your ideas and visions for how you can help solve the problem?
Give poor teenagers a future. Quit telling them they're bad. Quit bringing police departments into schools and establishing black law uniforms, black police cars, and let these kids have the same amenities as other areas. Also, we need to look at another part of the body besides just the frontal lobe and think about the pituitary gland and the adrenal gland that make cortisol flow and create aggression and anger that's always been forgotten. We don't have enough endocrinologists to treat the problem, but we sure know it's there. And so when Stanford is doing their example on at-risk children, mostly males, and showing that when they sleep, they're just pumping cortisol in their brains as they sleep. They're ready to wake up angry and wake up disturbed, and we're not treating it and we're ignoring it, and I want to start it today.
Thank you. Judge Leifman, we're planning a training in ACEs and resilience for judges in the Ninth Circuit. What does it mean to have ACEs-informed courts, and what will be the projected outcomes of this work?
I think it's critically important. I started to say in my remarks earlier that if I were to start my project again, I would have done more on trauma, and I would have had my school board represented and my superintendent at my first summit. Because what do we know about ACEs? Adverse childhood experiences. There are 9 questions on the assessment. If you have a score of 4 or above, you have pretty much 100% chance of ending up with an addiction and or mental health disorder. We know this. And so why are we waiting for people to grow up into our system with these illnesses? 70% of people in jail today in the United States have either a serious mental illness, a substance use disorder, or both, which has brought me to the conclusion that we probably need specialty courts for the 30% that don't, and we probably need a therapeutic jurisprudence system for the 70% that do, because we're not getting to the problem with what we're doing today. And so I would have ACEs as early as applicable, which would probably for 10 to 15-year-old kids. It would help us identify trauma that's going on in the household or outside the household immediately so we could help stop it, and we could start to get kids treated, because a young brain that is exposed to trauma is damaged even more than an adult brain. Remember, the frontal lobe doesn't connect until you're about 25 years old. And so the young brain that is still maturing, and as Bob talked about, what happens with trauma, it's physiological. It's not an emotional response. You can't just shake it off. And so you need to get people treated. It's really part of your pituitary system, it's part of your adrenaline system, and it releases cortisol, which is part of your flight or fight mechanism. And if you are in a constant state of trauma, the cortisol is firing all the time. And so if we identify it early and we start to get people treated, we could keep an entire generation from ever coming into the criminal system.
Judge Leifman?
There's a lot that you can do to help. You can almost feel right now that communities are getting frustrated with crime. They're getting frustrated with homelessness. And if we're not careful, we're going to see a huge swing back to lock them all back up. And it's realistic. And if you're a business owner or a homeowner and your house is broken into, or you see a ton of homeless people outside your favorite store, there's going to be a reaction. And it's realistic. And we can't fault people for feeling that way. And I think we have to accept that, because this isn't either or proposition. We can do all of this the right way and actually improve our public safety, but there has to be alternatives for much of this population. We can't just say we're not going to enforce or we're not going to arrest without having a good alternative, because you're going to see the community explode. And so you need to help us be ambassadors and help educate our legislators and know that there are two sides of this conversation, and that rehabilitation and treatment is a critical aspect, and moving upstream is a critical aspect to reducing crime. And as I tell my conservative friends, that you have two choices in the criminal justice system when it comes to people with mental health disorders and substance use disorders. You can either release them with treatment or you can release them without treatment. And when you release without, we know what happens. This country spends $1 trillion a year on direct and indirect incarceration costs. It's not that we're not spending money, we're just spending it in all the wrong places. Okay, and as crime gets worse and homelessness gets worse, more money will be spent to do that, trust me. Because number one, people want to feel safe. And we can't overlook that. They have a right to feel safe. That's not a bad thing. And they have a right to feel safe in every community where we live, whether it's wealthy or poor. And so we have to be smart about how we make these changes and make sure we do it in a way that protects people's public safety. And it can be done. And we've shown we could do it in Miami by making sure we offer the right type of services for the population that needs it. And I think if we do that and we work together, and things like, Florida needs to modernize its Baker Act and Marchman Acts. They're 50, 60 years old. They don't reflect modern science and research. And someone that is floridly psychotic shouldn't be running around the street and slowly dying on the street. It doesn't do anybody any good. And we know today in science that for many people that are psychotic for long periods of time, that there is permanent brain damage because the gray matter is being destroyed. And we are allowing people to become permanently disabled. And if they're your loved one, that's not what you want. And so we have to be smarter about it. And we have to give the state attorney, the law enforcement, and the PD the tools to actually help people get better and not just think we can ignore these other issues. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we're going to open up the floor. If anyone has any questions, Mr. Kirkpatrick will bring you a microphone. Please stand for any of the four panelists. And it can be for the panel as a whole or for any of the individual panelists.
Hi. Good morning. Ann Wedge McMillan. I'm an attorney and a mental health counselor. And I tried a case in front of Judge Leifman about 23 years ago. So it's been a long journey. And I'm joining the state attorney at the state attorney's office on May 22nd. So coming full circle. My question, though, and I'm wondering, directed specifically to Judge Leifman, is there a component where you have connected the dependency court system, the guardian ad litems, the programs that are happening in dependency court with all of the collateral that's happening in the criminal justice system? Because as a guardian ad litem for the last few years, I've noticed that we have parents in program who are also involved in the criminal justice system, and they're in program over there. The two programs don't talk to each other. and the children are cycling through foster care and dependency. And it feels like that's a really critical piece, another component to bring to the table to help the criminal justice system. I'm just wondering if Miami-Dade has done that.
So it's a wonderful point. Sadly, no. Maybe once we get our building open, I'll have a few minutes to work on that piece. But it needs to be done. You're 100% correct. But we have built programs within our system, and we now we were able to get the legislature a few years ago to do something really good. They extended the authority or jurisdiction for assisted outpatient treatment to the misdemeanor criminal division. And I strongly encourage you all to take a look at that. It is an amazing tool for the most psychotically ill population, mostly homeless, that keeps cycling again and again. And it's actually a civil procedure that's done in criminal court. We actually close the court. It's not open to the public. We turn into a civil court, but the criminal judge is handling it. And it's another diversion tactic, but we have guardian ad litems assigned into that court. And we can appoint a guardian for that individual if they meet criteria. And it works incredibly well. It's every judge's favorite docket to do. Why? Because you take someone who's been homeless for 20 years, we generally put them on long-term injectable medications, and in 2 or 3 weeks they're different people, and they have their life and humanity back, and it is remarkable to see. And so these are tools that we can use that are civil tools where we're not criminalizing the behavior, but we're using the civil law to help them get better, and you have to do that. I wish I could get everyone to voluntarily take treatment, but it's just not realistic. I'm reading this wonderful book right now, and there's a line in there. It's about this brilliant doctor in Boston who set up this medical homeless program that he's run for the last 25, 30 years, and it's remarkable. And there was this woman on the street that he cared for 10 years on the street, floridly psychotic, and he kept asking her to get into treatment, and she kept saying no. And she eventually got civilly committed, not by him, and he ran into her years later, and she looked amazing and was doing amazingly well. And he was all excited to see her, and he went up to give her a hug, and she looked at him and said, excuse my language, F you. You saw me on the street for 10 years and you didn't do anything. So while we think sometimes people who are telling us no about treatment, they're just so sick, they can't make an informed healthcare decision.
Right.
And so we have to be smarter about it. And it's not for everybody, and we have to try everyone to voluntarily get treated. But there are those cases we have to do more. And I don't see anything civil or right to allow a person out on the street to slowly die like that without any dignity.
All right, we're actually out of time. We need to move on, so I want to thank our 4 panelists. We give them a round. That's it.
Thank you, everyone. Let's give this whole group another round of applause. And also to Honorable Judge Bob Leblanc, thank you.